The trouble is our minds aren't well trained for this at all, right? Our awareness is wired to bounce from one sense perception to the other and to continually seek out pleasant experiences and avoid unpleasant ones. The Buddha talks about this in the Samyutta Nikaya. He says, "What would happen, monks, if you took 6 lengths of rope and tied one end of each to 6 creatures? A snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a jackal, and a monkey. And then you would tie the other end of all of these into a big knot and let go. Each of these animals would pull in a different direction, right? Trying to return to their particular most pleasant, comfortable, and desired surroundings, right? Seeking the pleasant. Snake would slide towards his nest. Mr. Crocodile would crawl for the river. The bird would try to take flight. The dog would bound toward the village, and the jackal to the charnel ground. And then the monkey would scamper for the trees, right? And the Buddha uses this imagery to illustrate an undisciplined mind, where each of the 6 senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, is drawn to its own kind of pleasure. So when we practice on retreat without all the usual day-to-day distractions, we get to see for ourselves that this happens. My ears seek pleasant sounds, which for me will always be the turkeys, gobble gobble. If I hear the turkeys, I'm like, oh. My eyes will seek pleasant sights. My nose, pleasant smells. My body, pleasant sensations. My mind prefers pleasant thoughts and emotions, like, who knew? Like, why wouldn't my mind prefer pleasant thoughts and emotions? We can't help this. We're propelled by instinct to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And that served us really well in ancient times, but not so much now. This mess in our mind keeps us from being free. It causes rather than relieves suffering. So, in the story the Buddha tells, each animal can only make headway towards its desires if it gains a temporary advantage in the tug-of-war over the others. Before long, each animal will expend its energy in the struggle and will eventually be dragged around by whichever is the strongest at the time. Who do you think would win? I vote for the dog. I think so, right? Depending on the dog. Daisy would win, right? In the same way, when the mind is bouncing around from sense pleasure to sense pleasure, we also become exhausted. And sometimes the strongest sense door will take hold. And for some of us, that might be eating, right? So over-consuming. It might be visual contact with screens or mental stimulation from the media. And those attachments keep us from the freedom we seek. And the Buddha said that the solution is to drive a stake through the central knot into the ground, which binds all 6 animals to one spot. Yeah? And the stake represents mindfulness of the body, the first thing that we learn in our mindfulness journey. And mindfulness of the body is the means of finding freedom from suffering.